everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Mindset series. Today's topic is super interesting because I'm focusing on why restriction never worked for me. So this is a super health focused mindset video. I'd love it if you continue watching, and I'll talk a little bit about my journey and the things that I'll talk a little bit about my journey of restrictive eating and how that's a cycle that I could just never be part of anymore. So for years, I thought that the answer to being healthy was being skinny, and this for me meant eating less and moving more. I thought that when I was being restrictive, I was doing a great thing because I was disciplined. And this worked for a while, I'm not gonna lie, like I lasted a good 12 months, possibly even more, of restrictive eating. I had cut my calories so drastically. I was intermittent fasting and I was also restricting food groups. So I basically wasn't eating any like processed carbohydrate. Obviously I was eating carbohydrates from things like fruits and vegetables, but I had really limited everything from like bread, pasta, rice, like any processed kind of carb I was not consuming. I also had a really high intake of fats and a pretty low intake of protein, and this was just a really poor, uneducated choice for me, but it's something that I did because it was getting me the results of being thin. And there's nothing wrong with being thin, but there's so many negative things that came from that. And just to name a few, obviously I'm going to talk about these a little bit more later in the video, but I did lose my period, I did have thin hair, I was weak, I was always dizzy, I could barely lift my arms and legs, but I thought this was the feeling of being healthy. And I'm essentially making this video for those of you who may be in a similar situation now and kind of want to learn a little bit more about it and how I kind of moved through this phase of my life. So at this point, I was super committed to being what I thought was healthy, and I was cutting out foods, I was exercising excessively, I was going to the gym every single day, 7 days a week, and I was running every single day, 7 days a week. On top of the fact that I was barely eating any carbohydrates, I was also just having a low calorie intake in general. And I only lasted, like I said, about 12, maybe 18 months doing this because I got to a point where I physically could not function anymore. I could not sleep, I lost my period as I said, and I was super weak. So exercising became so difficult because I did not have any energy to give to any. And in hindsight, at the time, I didn't realize this, but this is kind of what led me into sort of my binge eating era. So after this restrictive period where I tried to be healthy, became really thin, was very restrictive, over exercising, XYZ, I then transitioned into a phase of binge eating. And although I was still maintaining all my workouts, I was still, for the most part, eating the same restrictive diet where I had eliminated some food groups. I was intermittent fasting, so I had a very short window of eating time. I started at that point then to binge, and I think this was just from being so restrictive for so long that my body, once I allowed myself to eat something outside of the perfect diet I had designed for myself, my body and my brain were like, we need more of this. So if it was chocolate, if it was lollies, if it was chips, I'm not gonna lie, most of the time it was chocolate or like really warm comforting foods like peanut butter and things like that, that I would just gorge myself on until I was basically physically ill and I could not stomach anymore, but I still wanted to eat more. And this was kind of a repetitive cycle where I may go like a week on that perfect diet and then having a binge episode and then reverting back to that perfect diet for another week and going again and again and again, until I reached a point where I was like, I cannot keep doing this. It's so unhealthy for me physically and mentally that I decided that, okay, I obviously want to eat these foods. I obviously want to have some chocolate and I obviously want to have some peanut butter and whatever it is that I was choosing to binge on. I made a promise to myself at that point that every single day I was going to eat one entire row of chocolate when I got home from work. So I would do my normal diet that I had planned for myself, and then I would come home from work and I'd have one row of chocolate every single day. And I'm not gonna lie, like the first few months, would I only have one row? No. Like I would be smashing out half a block, sometimes a full block. And someone would consider that still binge eating. However, I committed to that, and after I would say maybe 2 months of every day eating at least one row of chocolate, obviously more some days, I got to a point where I came home from work and I was like, I don't even feel like the chocolate. Like, I've had it so much and it's so available to me and so accessible to me that I don't even feel like it today. And at that moment I realized, holy flippin' shitballs, like, I've just solved this problem. My problem was the restriction. I wasn't allowing myself to eat these foods, so that when I did have an opportunity to eat them, and I mentally allowed myself to eat them, I would go all in and I would be over the top. And the moment that I reverted to allowing myself to eat those foods every single day, I no longer wanted to eat them every single day. Like, it basically reverted me back to post-perfect diet Rochelle, where I enjoyed the foods that I love when I wanted them, and it wasn't any more complicated than that. I just want to recognise that I know how restriction and binge eating can be so overwhelming and so just take over your life, like with all the thoughts, and all you can think about is food. It can make eating out and social events super stressful because maybe the things that are available aren't fitting that the perfect diet that you set for yourself. And it can also steal the joy from eating. Like, I have this core memory of me during the time where I was so restrictive, and I was at my nan's house, and you know when you go to your grandparents' house and you know maybe they make like a special dish or something, a slice or a cake that you really enjoy, and I was there and it was offered to me and I said no, and I sat there and watched everyone else eat this nostalgic thing that I'd been eating since I was a kid, and thinking, well, this sucks, but I was actually proud of myself. I was like, you know what, no, I'm doing good, I'm disciplined, I'm not having this thing. In hindsight, I'm looking back thinking, why would I miss out on such like a beautiful memory to have with my family and something that I knew I enjoyed? And that's actually super sad, like that I would sit there and say no to this joyful moment, all because I thought that being thin was a healthy thing. And I fully recognize that this is such a complex thing, and I really encourage you to seek help for this via, you know, some mental health services or a registered dietitian who can really help you kind of develop yourself and guide you on this plan if you're not up to trying things on your own. And please know that anything I say is obviously what helped me in my own journey, and that I recognize that everyone's journey is super different. I just wanted to raise a little bit of awareness for the fact that it's such a common thing, and I think that so many eating disorders and body image issues kind of go unrecognized and swept under the carpet if they're undiagnosed. And I know that there are so many women out there that are suffering these things that have not been diagnosed with a certain thing, and you don't necessarily need to put a label on yourself, that's not what I'm saying, but I think just to recognise when you're unhappy or you're not treating yourself in the kindest way is really important. And I think if you can maybe seek some help for that, I'll link some resources below. I'd really love for you to check that out, and hopefully you can get yourself back to feeling the best version of yourself, because that's what I really want for you. So really when I started feeling better was when I started eating consistent meals. I started eating carbohydrates again. I started enjoying the foods that I love. So I started having chocolate, I started having cakes, cookies, chips, whatever. And no, I wasn't eating these things all day, every day, but I was eating them consistently enough when I felt like them that I never felt like I needed to binge on them, because I had access to them 24/7 if I wanted them. And actually there's a really cool thing that I've heard of and I truly believe in. So if you want to give it a go, if you're someone who can't resist eating a whole block of chocolate, is the 5 blocks of chocolate method, where you go to the shops, you buy 5 blocks of chocolate and you put them all in your pantry, and whenever you feel like chocolate, you go and eat the chocolate. And you never let yourself get below 5 blocks of chocolate. So the moment that 1 block of chocolate is gone, you need to go to the store and replenish that. You'll get to a point, and I know this sounds crazy, because it would have sounded crazy to me if I was older Rochelle, but you never want to get to a point where you have no chocolate left in the house, because that's when you're going to feel like, what if you had that craving for chocolate and it's not available? You're kind of going to go naturally into that binging mindset and that restrictive cycle of, oh, I don't have anything, like what am I going to do, what am I going to have, oh, that's a good thing I don't have it, maybe I should just eat a salad. No, if you feel like the chocolate, you should probably just eat the chocolate. And hitting that craving on the head is going to be a lot more effective than trying to push it away and away and away and eating maybe 5 other things because you didn't eat the original thing that was going to satisfy you. So never let yourself get below the 5 blocks of chocolate. Have chocolate when you feel like it, and you'll get to a point where there'll be days when you don't feel like chocolate, or there'll be weeks or months that go by without you even having the chocolate, and you're like, wow, I've still got 5 blocks of chocolate. So I think it's really just about your expectation that you put on yourself, and you know, allowing yourself to have the foods that you enjoy, obviously within a reasonable level, and still maintaining that healthy diet. Another really great way to kind of shift your focus away from a restrictive mindset that can lead you to, you know, that kind of toxic, being thin is healthy mindset is focusing on adding things into your diet instead of taking them away. So none of us should be restricting whole food groups full stop, unless you've obviously got, you know, diagnosed issue or some allergies. We should be including all of the food groups in our diet, and this is really important for us to be the healthiest version of ourselves moving forward and into the future. And these food groups are not suggested based off nothing. There is so much research that goes into what food groups you should be eating and, you know, that are healthy for humans to eat, that we should be following this sort of structure. So when we think about what we can add in, this could be adding in anything. Can I add more vegetables to this meal? Could I add another serve of grains to this meal? Could I add a serve of dairy to this meal? What can you add into your diet? Maybe things, different variety. What haven't you tried before? Instead of thinking, oh, no, I can't have this. What should I take away? That's got too much calories. Like, those thoughts are so consuming, as opposed to thinking in more of a positive way of what can I add to make this meal more nourishing, more filling, more satiating. All of these things are so much better to focus on than what can I eliminate. And I think even just as a person trying to be a positive and optimistic person, like just take everything the positive way, right? And take everything as what can I add? What can I add to my life? What can I add to my meals? And I think that would make it a lot easier for you to kind of manage. The last thing I just want to touch on kind of on this, because I know that this is something that I used to do, and it's definitely like the way you talk to yourself, and your self-talk is so important, especially when you're trying to heal or become that healthier version of yourself. And not telling yourself you can't do these things or telling yourself you have to do these things, like, oh, I have to work out 5 days a week and I have to run 10Ks a day and all these things. You don't have to do that, right? Like, find an exercise or form of movement that you enjoy that's going to make you feel happy and make you feel healthy. And that might not be weight training 4 times a week, and it may not be running, it may not be swimming, but it may be yoga, and it may be Pilates, or it may be dance, or it may be honestly, it could be anything. There's so many things that you can do. It may be gardening. Like, any sort of movement is going to be good for you, and I think finding a way to move that you enjoy is going to help you sustain that for such a longer time than doing something because you think you have to do it in order to be healthy or thin or look a certain way. So for me, it's obviously, I really enjoy so many forms of exercise, and I'm so grateful that and blessed that I do. I just love being able to move, and I love weight training, I love running, and I love Pilates, and I'm so grateful that I get to do those things every week, and I want that for you as well. So if that's not the same, maybe you don't like Pilates but you like swimming, maybe you're going to weight train, maybe you're going to run a little, and maybe you're going to swim a little. And I'm not saying you do each of these things every day, but having a bit of a mix in there is going to really help you stay committed and continue on. And I think the same with food, and the way I kind of operate around food is I know in my mind how to make a balanced meal, right? We need to have carbs, protein and fat. We know that half the plate should be veggies. We know that a quarter of the plate should be a meat or meat alternative like chicken or tofu, etc. And we know that the other quarter of the plate should be a starchy vegetable like potato or some grains. So anytime I make a meal, I have that in my mind, and I know exactly how to make something balanced. And the importance of making something balanced is so that I feel satiated for such a longer amount of time, that I feel full, and I've got enough energy to do all these things that I love. You really just have to have that emotional shift and mindset shift towards doing those things that are really going to set you up for success. And I know that there's so many things that I haven't covered in this video because this is such a complex thing, and I'm not by any means an expert on this. I just shared a little bit of my story in the hopes that someone maybe going through a similar situation now may connect with this and find help maybe in some of the resources I've linked below, or at least start to treat yourself with a little bit more kindness when it comes to eating and exercise. So I'm going to wrap it up here. I'm sorry if I've kind of babbled on about a bunch of random things, but this was a little more of a casual sort of mindset video, specifically around health, food and fitness. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked this style of video, please give me a thumbs up, make sure you subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.